All right, guys, welcome back to Mark Anthony's Music Picks. Today we're on episode 72. And for today's episode, I'm going to come back and kind of revisit a topic that I touched on many episodes ago. If you remember, and I'll give you a link down below if you haven't seen this already, I did a Jonathan Peters Lesser Known Tracks episode that actually turned out to be one of the most popular episodes that I ever made. And I still had a bunch of other Jonathan Peters records that I wanted to present, but I was trying to find a consistent format or some kind of common thread between them all. So I decided to do a Deeper Records NYC episode. So for today's episode, I have 6 records that I picked out of the Deeper catalog that I want to review with you guys. I know for a lot of you, some of these tracks are old hat, but it might be fun for you to come back and revisit some of these. For people that aren't as familiar with Deeper Records, it launched in New York, in Manhattan, in 1995, and it was run by Jonathan Peters. And if you want an idea of what the Deeper Records sound was like, it was basically if you took Junior Vasquez sound, like the big room drama, catwalk, over the top, big drums, big synths, built for the big club with the high roof, like you take that sound and you maybe just give it like a slight tweak or a slight alteration, and you basically have Junior and Jonathan's sound, in my opinion, kind of running in parallel, at least when those labels started. Now Junior's his specific label, Junior Vasquez Music, didn't start till 1999, but Vasquez was doing the big room, New Yorkie, over-the-top circuit sound as far back as 1994, and Jonathan Peters started Deeper in 1995. So I feel like it's kind of fair to say that they were almost like cousins to one another. I hope none of the producers on Deeper take offense to that, but the tracks were kind of crazy back then. It kind of was representative of the era and the aesthetic that was happening in the clubs at that point. And for that reason, because those clubs aren't around, because there's not, dance circles and people going nuts and people hanging off of balconies and doing crazy stuff that used to happen in New York clubs back in the day, the music doesn't really doesn't like age well. It hasn't aged well, in my opinion. Like if you play some of these tracks, even to people that are into house music and techno now in its modern state, like it kind of sounds like psychotic carnival hard house music. It's bonkers, but back then, to us, to people that were going out to clubs in, the late 90s, early 2000s, this was the sound that we came to love, right? These were the anthems. So I'm going to go through my top 6 in chronological order, going from oldest to newest, and I hope you guys enjoy these. The first one that I want to present is this A-Luv Get Ridiculous EP. Now, I said that Deeper Records haven't aged very well, but I think this one actually has. Out of all of them, and the track that I like in particular is the A2. It's just Off the Hook. There's an Off the Hook remix, and then there's Off the Hook, the original. I like the original, and for me, being a Philly person primarily, I had a lot of exposure to this. Like, not a lot of the Deeper Records made it out of the Sound Factory realm where Jonathan Peters kind of like broke them and played them and kind of like made them into anthems. A lot of them stayed there. Like some of the tracks that I talk about later, you might have heard them in North Jersey or along the Jersey Beach, but you weren't going to hear them anywhere else in the world, that's for sure. This one, I think Get Ridiculous, aka Off the Hook, did actually kind of like spread out, because in Philly, when I would go to Egypt nightclub down on Delaware Avenue on Wednesday nights, like it was almost a lock that you were going to hear Off the Hook at some point in the night. And it was really cool because, back then when people were making tracks, there was definitely like a sense of originality and creativity, and like, what would happen if I put this into a track? You know what I mean? And for young people that have never been exposed to like a traditional landline, like a phone line, if you took the phone off the hook and you walked away from it, or if you hung the phone up and it didn't sit on the receiver quite right, if you let it sit there for 30 seconds or a minute, it would go into the sequence where it would start to beep at you and it would say, please hang up. The receiver appears to be off the hook. Well, Love and Lottie, A-Luv here, and Lottie, I guess, decided to make this into a track, and it turned out to be so sick. In the sample here, you can hear that they took the like the alternating like off the hook beep tone and put that behind a beat, and then use the off the hook automated message to kind of like signify the drop.
Please hang up. There appears to be a receiver off the hook. Please check your main telephone and extension. Then try your call again. Thank you.
I always loved this. I thought it was so cool, and I mean, just look at how primitive the printing is on this. Like, this is from 1997. There's just something kind of I don't know, I guess charming or almost like cartoonish about how that's printed. I think that's so funny. But yeah, a classic record, and probably one of my favorite deeper records of all time. My next title is one that I'm going to be straight up with you guys. I know everybody loves Nightbreed, the Sound Factory heads, especially people that were going there. In 1998, like this was hammered, and this means a lot to you guys. I don't I don't like the track. I have to say I don't like it, but I'm gonna present it because I know it's super special to you guys. But when I was talking about deeper records and Junior Vasquez sound, kind of having that over the top psycho carnival sound, the synth in this kind of is like what typifies that sound to me. One of the other interesting things about this is Nightbreed. I thought Nightbreed was a person, but it's actually a collective of maybe 4 or 5 different producers, and it seems to be relatively obscure. Like I tried to look on Discogs and research who some of these Nightbreed producers are. I don't know who they are, and because this was produced so long ago, I don't really have a way to like go and really dig deep without really going into like the bowels of like the New York scene and try to dig up who these people were. But one thing's for sure, they definitely did release a classic in most people's eyes here. My next pick here for you is a super obvious one for any Sound Factory head, and this is the Latin Headhunters' Lift Me Up. Latin Headhunters are Chaz Rodriguez and Eddie Acosta is the other guy. and they had a few pretty significant bombs that came out in the Sound Factory realm. They also had Light Your Spirit, which I also thought was really cool. And over this shoulder, you can see they have the White Rabbit release, which was like really popular, even though White Rabbit came out in like 2002, 2003, really at the decline or tail end of Sound Factory by most people's standards. Lift Me Up was a hit though. This came out in 1998, and there's two mixes of it. There's the Brooklyn mix and there's the Manhattan mix. The Manhattan mix is the one that got the most play, and that's because if you look at the credits, Jonathan Peters had his hand in the production or remix of it. And that's also the one, the Manhattan mix, is the one that appears on this Last Dance CD, which I regard to be the best JP, little side bootleg live CD that ever came out. I mean, I love this. And not only is Lift Me Up great, but it segues right into Corrupt. I mean, holy crap, man. My next pick for you guys is a huge hit. Everybody knows Deep Chemical, right? I actually was hoping that when that Last Dance CD that I was just showing you guys a minute ago, when that came out, I really was hoping Deep Chemical would be on there because I wanted to have like a live format or a live kind of rendition of Deep Chemical to listen to while I was jamming out in the car, and it didn't make the cut for those tracks, but definitely an anthem here. It's produced by M.A.M.P. and Benny Mays. Now, Benny Mays is just Benny Mays. He had a couple of other tracks, I think one of which was on Deeper, and M.A.M.P. was Stefan K, which later on became Creamer and K. I'm going to do a Creamer and K episode sometime in the future. I'm just waiting for a couple more records to come in. But anyways, Deep Chemical. The first time that I got to hear Deep Chemical was at the Sound Factory Classics party, the first one that they ever did in 2002. And I think it was around 4, maybe 5 in the morning. I happened to be standing on the main floor. If any of you were there that night, you'll remember how crowded it was. It was extremely packed to the point where it was kind of scary. Like, man, if something breaks out in here, I don't know if everybody's going to be able to get out the door in time. Like, it just kind of had this, like, packed, but it's like, I hope they don't let any more people in kind of feeling like, okay, like this is enough people. But anyways, I was standing dead center on the main floor, and I remember Jonathan was looping the build-up of Deep Chemical. So it's a long build-up and maybe a 2-minute build-up, and each time that it got to the end and it was about to drop, he like sent it back, and he sent it back at least twice, and it was kind of like building the suspense up. And when it finally dropped, like, it was just like kind of this rush hit the floor, And I remember just being astonished standing in the middle of the Sound Factory floor at like the clarity of the sound. Like, if you guys remember, I mean, that was one of the most well-tuned systems that ever existed, in my opinion. And just hearing like that like refined punch and the, you know, the claps that Chemical has in it, has like very distinct hand claps. It was just a really sick experience. It's something that I'll never forget. My next pick is a little bit of an oddball out of the Deeper catalog. It's this one here. Now, this is Deeper Records number 28 in the series, and it's the last vinyl, I think. No, actually, the next one that I'm going to present to you is the last vinyl that came out. This, I think it came out in 2001. If I had to guess. And it just says Sound Factory Unreleased Dubs if you look at it. I saw a couple of these on Discogs when I looked earlier today for like, there was one for like $10. This one's really good. There's two good tracks on here. I'm going to talk about the Garth dub. It was called the Garth dub back in the day. That track to me has aged well. It's always been unique. It's kind of got that weird like like it's got that weird sound in it. It's got like a nice bass line to it, and it also, as it gets into the second half of the track, anybody that's really familiar with it will remember it kind of has that sound like if, for like the guys out there, if you ever got punched in the face or got hit in the head really hard, your ears kind of like ring for like a second, and the Garth dub also has that effect going on where in stereo, this high pitch, like almost like your head is ringing kind of sound just like oscillates left and right, and it creates a really tripped out track. Like I've always loved the Garth dub, and I thought it was one of the best things that Jonathan Peters ever did. Garth dub was also featured on the Live with Jonathan Peters CD, which I don't have the case for anymore. I think I have one of the discs and the other one got stolen out of my car or something like that. But it was called Trickling Down Your Mind back then because he couldn't call it the Garth dub and sell CDs and Sam Goody at the same time. It was like a licensing conflict. On the B side of this, is, or maybe I don't know which is the A and which is the B, but on the other side of it, there's another track called Divine One More Try, I think. And that track on the same Live with Jonathan Peters CD was made into What Do You Desire? So they took the female vocal out of Divine, kept the instrumental, and then made the What Do You Desire a cappella and kind of like put it over that for the Live with Jonathan Peters CD. And most people, I think, would agree that What Do You Desire was one of the highlights of that mix for people that were fans back in the day. And my final pick, the most obvious, like what else am I going to choose here? One more to go. Going Through It. You got to talk about Going Through It. I have mixed feelings about this record. I always have. I understand that probably above all else, it was the most like hype anthem for the second half of the Sound Factory era. You know, maybe if you want to say that this was like almost marks the beginning of the end for it as far as you know, the club being well regarded and highly respected amongst club goers. But Going Through It, it was an anthem, man. I remember when this first broke, I was hanging out on all the message boards back in the day, one of which was sicktracks.com. Oh my gosh, what a shit show that thing was. But somebody on there had been there one of the first nights that Going Through It got played, and other people that weren't there were like, well, what does it sound like so that when I go, I can hear it? And one of the guys on the board said it sounds like if a truck were driving down the highway and it downshifted, and, you know, it had to, like, you know, the engine, like, revved up when it downshifted. That's basically what the synth sounds like, and I think that's actually a really good description of it. This is a track that you need to hear. I think you need to hear it at Sound Factory, right? It came out later on the Louis DeVito CD, Volume 5, and I remember having that, and I listened to it in the car, and I was just like, this does not sound good to me. So I also understand that, you know, hearing this at peak hour in Sound Factory, completely different context, different sound system, a lot of energy in the room. I'm sure it made a lot more sense then. All right, that's all for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I'm also going to come back later and do Jonathan Peters' most well-known tracks, biggest hits ever. So stay tuned for that episode. Maybe in another month or two, I'm going to do that one. To Deeper Records, thank you for all the tunes, and I hope you guys are doing well. Take care. Peace.